So I guess I'll just dive straight into asking the big question. Uh, does anybody remember what happened when last we met?
We fought smoke kitties?
Smoke kitties were a thing that apparently are trying to scare us, but are not. They don't hate us, and they're
Hmm.
kind of friendly.
Hmm.
And there was definitely a lot of resentful talk about family impositions and what's
Hmm.
happening to the estate.
Hmm. Absolutely. And so when last we met, our heroes uh, had the opportunity to return to their family home after a long, long time. Their family home is watched over by their great grandfather, the lord of the manor, as it were, who holds on to his power with an iron grip. Um, his immediate children are all gone, uh, but your parents, the two remaining boys of the second generation, raised you as well as they could. Although one might argue, perhaps, that your wet nurse, Inoko, had more to do with your raising than the your somewhat absent parents. Each of you had scattered to the four winds upon your maturity. One of you going to join the Kakita early on as a duelist. One of you as a uh, administrator, looking after the needs of the clan. One of you as a soldier, out serving and sending back what funds you could. And one of you originally had retreated into the wilderness, but on your way back, that person had been waylaid by misfortune, and a friendly spirit has joined in his place, perhaps to serve as a proxy for him, or perhaps as a proxy for something else. Uh, you, in fact, faced off with some sort of strange, shadowy creatures in the shape of cats with six legs that whipped shadows around them, both in their own shapes and as weapons. You defeated them, and although they were certainly hostile, to your point, they were actually um, friendly in a way, as though they were attempting to communicate and had no means of doing so. Your return, however, uh, that is an event in your future. In your past, you had returned and were getting ready to begin your welcoming feast, which involved a variety of conversations, several of which, in fact, referenced a patercide and other uh, other moments of where your perhaps your duty to your family is coming into conflict with your duty to your family. Our next scene opens some hours after your arrival. You have been shown to your old family quarters. For most of you, this is a familiar, familiar quarters. You can at least remember in vague, at least vaguely recall having lived here. Gohan, not as much. You are currently wearing the face of someone, but you don't really remember have his memories. So, and as you might recall, the whole place is somewhat ramshackle compared to as your childhood memories would paint it. In the Your welcoming feast will be served in the main room of the main house. It is If this was a larger estate, you might have separate halls for dining and receiving visitors. But in this case, what you have is a single, fairly large hall with the ability to be divided to some extent by well placed uh, shoji screens, along with a kind of a staircase across the back, which goes up to the upper floor, which is where your great grandfather still lives um, in the Lord's chambers. Within the main hall, The room is lit by tapers, basically, enclosed in very elaborate and very old glass balls. The room is set as though for dining, for formal dining. So small, low tables set out around kind of the center. So if you can imagine, there's a line of tables to the right and a line of tables to the left, and then a single large table set on um, a little bit of a raised platform, which is also itself put here. It's usually not here. And by large table, I'm not talking about like a giant table of, massive proportions. It's big enough for two people. You are each shown uh, by, if you might also recall, a young woman who introduced herself with no family name, just as Machiko. Um, and Machiko uh, takes the time to show each of you to an individual table where you have a bowl of water and some salt set for you. She will, because there's just her really being the servant, rather than being able to wait for you. She actually has to leave you and go and get the next person. Probably the first person shown in is actually Kakita Sho.
Very well.
And this is, you are used to formal dining. And let's see, do you have the history skill?
I do not.
Okay. The whole way this is set up strikes you as horribly old-fashioned.
We'll use the term antiquated.
Antiquated. All right, antiquated is a good one. You can see where the things you are used to have evolved from here, have come from these kinds of practices, but yeah.
Help.
Next shown in would most likely be Sho, or not Sho, Yua. Yes, Yua. And in your case, you haven't been formally dining since you left.
Yes.
So the likelihood of you remembering it, to what extent you are concerned about remembering your formal manners is probably an open question.
I try.
After that would come Yukimaru, shown in by this little girl in your own family home. And let's see, I believe you're a courtier. Do you also have history?
I do indeed.
Okay. She is showing you in out of order. There are any number of orders that could be used here, depending upon your perceived relative status. But in no way does Yua come before you.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I was like, one by age, I should be coming in before her, and possibly even over by my cousin, although he carries a higher name at the moment. So at first, it's not so bad, but yeah, it's there's probably a bit of a twinge and kind of twitch of the eye being shown in after his sister.
And do you have the insight skill?
I do indeed.
Okay. You can see Machiko. You can see that like on her neck, you can see you can see the trembling, right? And you can see like on the edges where she's tried to do her makeup, you can see little drips of sweat as she's trying to guide you in. She may well be like 30 seconds from a full bore panic. And kind of waiting there in the wings, we have Gohan. So I'm terribly curious, Gohan. Are you going to wait, or?
Yeah, well, it seemed like everyone else was being let in, and Gohan isn't really familiar with these forms of etiquette. So, like in the morning, I'm going to stand around and hope a servant saves me from myself and ushers me into the building.
Okay. You see Machiko come out. I believe you also have the insight skill.
I do indeed.
Okay. Without I'm asking because one of the ways we can handle very simple resolution is just to ask if you're proficient in something. Um, you can get deeper information if you were to attempt a skill check, but uh, you can see that her eyes. You know how people when they're really starting to like freak out, they like pull their face back a little bit in order to prevent themselves from smiling, laughing, frowning, or crying all at once. She's got that kind of pulled back face look, like she's okay. I'm almost done. Then I can go cry in a corner. Bows to you and turns. Doesn't even say anything. She just bows slightly and turns and starts scurrying away.
Well, he's Gohan's here to supposed to make people's lives better, and he is imitating a priest. So he's just gonna give her like a brief blessing. He's probably overheard. Like he's hoping it's the correct one. It's like Gesundheit. What? Like oh shit.
Do you have religion?
I do not.
Oh dear.
I'm aware
Um,
it's a thing.
uh, absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and give me a wisdom check as you are moving in behind.
So 18.
18. All right. Um, you give what you hope is an appropriate blessing. Uh, the rest of you do hear the blessing. Um, does anyone have the religion proficiency?
We're not that religious.
Apparently not.
Not a very pious family.
No, not at all.
Well, there is one person who who might have it, because descending the stairs, his robes drawn close around him, his these are quite formal. It's a beautiful, old, almost ancient, silk kimono of pure, kind of deep blue, with the with embroidery of waves on it in white silken thread, is the slow and tottering form of your great grandfather. And as the blessing is, muttered, he pauses actually halfway down the steps and turns and looks directly at Gohan, um, with what can only be described as a piercing gaze. Um, that is the most attention any of the three of you who actually grew up here have ever seen him pay to anything. Um, he treated you like you were some sort of weird little shadows throughout your growth, but for a very brief moment, he is actually focused on something. And then he continues down this, he turns his head and continues down the steps. As he shuffles down the last step, Unoko, your solid nurse, comes around, and she is carrying a tray which has sake bottles set on it. As she's, and she comes in through the back of the house. And Machiko scurries from Gohan. She's barely just kind of gestured at your table, and she scurries over to get your great grandfather. Takes his arm, and he leans onto her as the two of them turn. And Unoko comes and sets bottles of sake on your tables. As Machiko is helping your great grandfather sit. There's a moment of, as the old man, is kind of sitting there swaying, and Unoko looks about, and the shoji on the right side of the hall opens up, and you can see Atsutane standing there. He is a man well in the, let's call him in the prime of his life. Perhaps late middle age. His hair is frosted, and pulled back into a top knot. His robes are tightly bound around his chest, and he has a hashimono, one of the big coats, over the top of that. um, because he's never been good with the cold. Um, he stands there and looks to the right and to the left. He notices you. He nods ever so slightly. And then he comes and he sits at the table, sitting at his grandfather's right hand. Inoko scurries and gives him a sake bottle. He looks briefly at her and then takes his sake, looks around. His lips drawn to a thin line. And he looks like he's about to say something when you hear on the front steps a kind of heavy shuffling, and you see coming up the steps Fujimune, his brother, kind of draped across the top of the stout figure of Chikakata, the Ronin that Fujimune hired, who knows how many decades ago, to help guard the village. And as the two of them come staggering in, the smell of sake comes with them. Chikakata kind of levers the lordling around and gets him settled without any help from the two women. Inoko begins to move to bring him a bottle of sake, and your great-grandfather just raises a hand. And with that, the whole family is there together for the first time in at least a decade, if not longer. And that uncomfortable quiet that has pervaded the entire household, and indeed the lands around, now settles onto the welcoming feast. Yukimaru,
Mm.
as the courtier in the situation, what would you like to do?
I think chief among them would be to, offer up the first drink,
Mhm.
the first toast to our patriarch, to my great grandfather, and give a toast to his continued good health and blessings of Jurgen, the fortune of longevity and fortitude.
Okay. Um, are you so you stand and you give do you stand to give the toast or simply raise your cup at your
I
table?
think it would be just to while still kneeling in my saison,
Mhm.
pour the first cup and offer it up to share amongst the family all together uh, in this in this manner. Yeah.
Okay. Um, your voice almost echoes because it's so quiet. Um, and why don't you go ahead and now give me an insight check,
Okay.
unless you wanted to use one of your courtier abilities.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and use eyes betray the heart. Um,
Ah,
yeah. Whenever that one's gonna have to wait for him to for my great
mhm.
grandfather to actually say a thing. So I think I will
Yes.
just make the insight check for right now. But
Okay, that's
I'll
great.
have a reaction to whenever he does a thing or says a thing.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Here we go. 19.
19. Um, okay. Well, this actually isn't all that terribly complex. It's more the you have to force yourself to notice it. Um, Atsutane's wife, who if I remember correctly, is your mother. Um,
Mhm. That is correct.
there's no table for her. So as you are, as you raise your cup in toast to the whole family, um, and you've this is a world of politeness, right? Realize you knew it, but as you say the words, you know it. There
Mm-hmm.
is no table here for your mother.
But there is one for the Ronin.
The Ronin is currently standing behind Fujimune.
Okay.
Also, when you say he's standing, how much of that is swaying?
Well,
It's just real sloppy.
yeah, well, Chikakata is actually ramrod straight. Fujimune, Yodomi Fujimune, he is upright because his companion, friend, whatever it is you might think of them, almost has his knee up behind him. Um,
Gotcha. So
uh,
he's the one that smells of sake, but
mhm.
uh, but the Ronin is well, yeah, okay.
The Ronin is standing there, stoically ignoring the fact that his employer is basically at a family gathering, leaned against his knee so he doesn't fall over.
Well, he's earning his koku.
I am standing here. No one sees me. Just like we don't see the missing table. Nobody sees me. I just keep telling myself that it'll be true. All right. All right. Your great grandfather, as you give your toast, raises his cup to you and to his two grandsons. Um, there's an opportunity then to drink sake.
Mm-hmm.
And he pauses. And then he says, I am glad that all of you could return here at the start of winter. I am glad that the children of our family are here to see our choice for in the spring. Young Atsutane will take my place as Lord and his wife as Lady of these lands.
And Sho will just give a quick look over to Yukimaru.
Yukimaru almost like audibly lets out like a sigh of relief and kind of tries to pass through the shared look with his cousin there that, oh good, now I don't have to sit here and try to make this meal all about making my great grandfather retire. So that's one thing off of his list.
Awesome. Just a curiosity, did you want to trigger Ice Betray the Heart?
I mean, I was, but now that things are already going my way,
Okay.
not so much. I want to hold off on that reaction.
Okay. Your drunk father or uncle, depending upon which of you which of you we're talking to, um, kind of lifts himself up a bit at that. Um, he begins to say, and the Unoko and young Machiko come basically marching in with platters, um, with bowls of something, which they begin to set before you. And as they set them before you, you see that they are bowls of white rice. Um, for any of you who grew up here, that does not come from around here. Uh, Rice farming is something that this area is not well suited for. You grow millet and barley primarily around here. So, I mean, they are putting their best foot forward. Bowls.
When they come in, I'm going
Mhm.
to try to share a look with my sister and kind
Mhm.
of glance down at her table and then make a motion of my head over towards our good lady mother, and hopefully translate over to her that something needs to be done without having to say anything or betray any other movement other than that. Uh, as they bring in uh, the expensive rice.
Yeah.
As a field spirit,
Mhm.
Oda, aka Gohan, is gonna kind of lean over the rice and just do like a big deep breath, inhaling the aroma of it, and just be like, "Ah!" It's like, "Is this from?" And he'll just kind of go on. He'll be able to identify like the field that it comes from, and just be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, very." It's like the slight phosphorus content in the ground gives it an extra sweetness. It really brings it out because of the stressors.
uh,
You gets the signal and is
uh-huh.
sitting there worrying, but she
Mhm.
also like is not very good at this sort of thing and isn't exactly sure how she would approach it at this point. At the end
Right.
of meal, she could
Well,
see a way to do it, but not right now.
okay.
Fair
Well, and
enough.
yeah, and your mother is actually not even in the room. I mean, she has no
Mhm.
table, she has no room, she's not here. Uh,
Oh, I thought she had been let in as well, but there
oh,
was no
no,
table
No,
for her.
she's
Oh,
missing.
okay. No,
she's missing.
then in that case, that is my bad. I thought
Well,
she was sitting there with nothing before her
no, no,
because
no.
we pour. But okay,
Uh,
fair enough.
just to make sure, for the grandchildren, neither of the spouses are in, correct?
Well, yes. Fujimune's spouse pretty much lives in Otasanuchi.
Yeah.
If she were here, that would be like, is she pregnant again? I mean, she's almost never here.
Okay.
But Sani lives here. She's somewhere. She's just not here. So, in truth, that byplay was entirely appropriate because your mom's not here.
Fair
And
enough.
That's yeah, that works.
yeah, I mean that's why I didn't like. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I was more clear about that.
No.
Yeah, no, she is
So,
just not here. There's no table, no Sani, no nothing.
Then I retract my my earlier head bobbles.
well, the head bubbles, we can exchange a look going like, "Where's mom?" And that is entirely appropriate.
Right?
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, she's been announced, so you'd think, as the next lady, you think she'd be here for this, but yeah.
and at the end of the meal, I could go and ask after her, like to go, ask to go visit her or something, but not in the middle of
Mhm.
dinner, probably.
But that's up to you, right? Um, how do you are currently faced with kind of a bit of a quandary. The newly announced lady is not here. She has no table, so she was not invited. Uh, the drunk brother has not yet quite made a fool of himself in public, or at least in this room in public. And small bowls of um, mountain ferns, along with pickled radishes, and what appears to be uh, small pieces of probably fried tofu are being set on your table. All right. Um, there's again a moment of pausing, and then I'm show. Um, again, you this this should be a very formal feast. Um, small bowls brought out in long intervals for lots of conversation, whereas most of it has just been served just kind of straight up to you. Again, you recognize it. I mean, you've seen this sort of before, but what? And mountain ferns, apparently fried.
Yeah, Sho is doing the best he can to be polite and eating what is presented to him. But as far as conversation goes, has there been like any outside of what the grandfather has mentioned?
No, no.
Okay.
There's been that moment. There's been a toast, and yeah, there's been no conversation. Nothing has been happening.
All right, then I'll speak up after a little bit and say, well, I see that the family traditions have continued on in our absence.
Your father gives you sort of a blurred, drunken look. Um, then he blinks. The old man, sitting up at his table with his robes spread out around him, cocks a head to one side. Uh, Indeed, young Sho. Perhaps you could elaborate on your thought?
Well, if we were to be here for some time, I know that the family's general tradition is to put forth a welcoming feast, and we tend to put it all on the first impression.
Hmm.
And what an impression it is.
Hmm. There's a pause as your grandfather, great grandfather is. Hmm. I think that, like most impressions, it is what you take from it, perhaps.
Very much so. As they've said over in the Dueling Academy, it is always the first glance that is the most impactful.
Um, what is your passive insight?
My passive insight is a 16.
16. All right.
One of the few skills I'm actually trained in.
Well, hey, it's something useful. Let's see here. For the second time in living memory, your great your great grandfather actually focuses his attention on you, and you feel that kind of the lifting of the hairs on the back of your hands as you are assessed. Um, you are assessed in a glance. If you wanted to attempt insight for yourself, you could perhaps determine if you were found wanting.
Yeah, I'll definitely be doing that. But mostly what I want to do is kind of stare him back down. Not necessarily as a like trying to force him down himself, but saying, "Oh no, I've learned your ways and I'm willing to stand up to the task."
Okay.
Well, 9.
9. Does anyone wish to be of assistance? Subtle hint to Yukimaru.
Sure. What do you need me to roll?
Well, do you have an ability that might help you when an ally fails a skill check?
I just might.
Nothing quite like starting off a dinner party with a very thinly veiled insult.
Yes, I can throw in honest assessment,
Okay.
and that will let me. When another character you receive would fail a skill check, you can spend a reaction and one of your intrigue dice up to your proficiency bonus. All right, so let's just add. You can add 7 to that to make that into at least a 16.
Well, yeah, we'll take the 16.
Okay. So you give him back a measured gaze, and try to weigh back. You are aware of what he has been taught, and you were taught the same things.
It's a bit of a look, a bit of a showing him how he should hold his head and
Mhm.
chin there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you're and you see the conflict brewing over there, Ikamaru, and you're like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
brace up."
get a look at this one of these. Yeah, there you go. Give him that.
Yeah. What one piece of information would you like about your grandfather?
I would like to know his general
Great grandfather.
disposition of this entire meeting. Like, because he's been pretty emotionless throughout, but I
Mhm.
kind of want to know, like, he's making this grand gesture, he's putting forth the feast. I want to know if he's doing this more along the lines of voluntarily being like, no, my time is now done, or if this is like a joyful thing, be like, yay, I finally get to retire. Like, I just kind of want to get a little bit more of the
Mhm.
lay of his emotional spectrum right now.
Okay. Um, he is at peace. Um, so
Okay.
you look back into his eyes, and you have dueled many a man. You are a skilled swordsman. You have not only in practice but in truth, and you have met many men who had much to do and much to live for. That is not the gaze that is staring back at you. You have met men who wanted to die, and that is not what you see in his eyes. He is a man who has come to the end of a long and full life, and he is ready to set it down.
Okay.
Uh, were he not old and infirm, that would be the kind of steady gaze that might be concerning to find on the other end of at the other end of a sharp blade,
But this
because
is
he
a life well lived.
yes, he has
Okay.
had a life well lived, and it is time to set it down. So, not seeking death, but welcoming death as an old friend.
So that steely eye gaze is not as steel as it once was.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good to know.
All right. Um, Yua,
Yes.
um, you have been watching the interplay of family and been, doing your quiet, dutiful daughter thing. But what what have you been trying to understand
Um,
as the meal continues in silence?
I am. There is a lot of uncomfortableness going on here that I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm very nervous about because I'm afraid to have everybody be mad at me because that's my uh
Mm-hmm.
default state as far as I can tell. Um, but lacking if the silence goes on too long and it gets too
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, then I would,
Yeah,
which
which
it
it.
obviously seems to be getting to,
Mhm.
I will say, um, how do I say this? Um, I noticed on the road coming in,
Right.
my compliments, the village is well cleared and defended and defensible, and it seems like our position is ready to face whatever obstacles might come with whether natural or
Mhm.
a threat, and that is an accomplishment in these trying times. So try to offer some praise.
Your Mhm. Your uncle actually straightens up at that. Um, uh, kind of lift. You know how drunk people, when they're really trying to like hold themselves straight, they kind of like stiffen up their spine and try to sit up real
Mhm.
real upright, and then they sway a little bit side to side. because they can't quite manage it. Yeah, that's what he's doing. Um, um, and he speaks with the very careful enunciation of a man trying to get his words out clearly. Thank you, niece. That has been the project of the last 3 years. We have been working with Toki in the village to make sure that the approaches are clear, but well gated. So those vagabonds can't get into our fields. And then he sort of slumps down a little bit because that took a lot of effort. And your uh, and your father, Atsutane, picks it up by slamming his sake cup down. I appreciate your work, brother, but we should be mindful not to disturb our neighbors. He pushes himself back a little bit like he's about to stand up. And Inoko, and just as he's doing so, Inoko and Machiko come in with platters containing little bowls. And Machiko comes and sweeps up your bowls. And at this moment, Gohan, give me a perception check.
All right. I'll take that crit.
Nice. And what is the total on your perception?
Perception's not something I'm trained in, so that will get me a total of 23.
That's more than high enough. You've been watching, and you noticed a handful of things as as these women come sweeping in just before the disaster strikes. One, you saw the older one, Inoko, kind of lurking in the background there. Two, you notice that the old man sitting up front did not touch his rice. In fact, he had set it to his right side and had actually placed chopsticks near it, but not in it or on it. But an empty bowl of rice is swept up by the servant. The third thing you notice is that they are laying out bowls of just cut and pickled peaches. So these peaches have been cut into very artfully cut into a chrysanthemum, opened up around the pit, which, although extremely cool looking, is actually really, really difficult. Sorry, I was watching YouTube videos about it. I'm like, wow, you can do that? Anyways, and yeah. And then the two servants having stepped in just in the moment of the conflict about to erupt, they sweep through and leave.
And the empty bowl that they had, that came from our grandfather's table?
Your grandfather's rice.
Obviously, she spoke and things broke again, but she's trying to figure out the undercurrent of like what is going on. Why was there a fight about to brew there? So she's
Well,
she gives her brother a look and is like, and she wants to try and figure out she can figure out anything about what
Okay.
was happening there.
Okay. Absolutely, you can. I was.
Okay.
Yes, I was about to loop back into that, but there was this moment, and yes, it's like your father sits back down and looks at his bowl, And you take a moment, you look at your brother, you make an insight check.
Okay. I do not have much insight, but maybe other people don't. No, I am clueless. But that's okay. I'm just here for muscle. No, I don't want
Yeah,
you
I
to,
can't
but
save
you can
that
get your
check.
own check.
Okay. Like, no.
We'll get there.
Well, yeah, there's a moment as as you are all once again uncomfortably eating your dessert, and your great grandfather pushes himself up to his feet, and he looks down at all of you, um, and his eyes are bright uh, and sharp as they he looks across you. I am thankful to you, and here he bows. Quite deep, actually. Head down, eyes down. And I speak to you with as much respect and, in truth, hope for my family when I say that it humbles me that you have returned. And I hope that as I set down these burdens, you can find it in your own hearts to offer your support to the new lord and lady of these halls. I hope that over this winter we may, together, repair those bonds between us which time has frayed. And I hope that all of us set aside that which we desire and take up the responsibilities that are ours. He pauses there, and that would be your opportunity, if you would like additional information, to attempt perception, insight, history, religion. Yeah, that's about it.
I'll take another chance at the insight.
Okay.
And while this is going on, Sho will actually raise up his glass of sake and says, "And that is something that we may toast to."
Okay. Yeah, you may each respond, obviously, to this event. In addition to your role represents your response.
Ooh, I'll take that 24 insight.
I'll do insight and get 15.
Each skill obviously reveals a slightly different thing.
Tried history, but I'm just here for muscle, obviously. Truly. Truly.
Truly. Okay.
All right. I get a 17 to go against my great grandfather's passive perception with an eyes betray the heart investigation check.
Okay. Now that is your reaction. What is your action?
Oh, true. Let me.
Courtier. This is the courtier thing, right? I mean, you get
Yeah.
reactions,
You
and you
get
can.
get reactions to do all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I will do a history,
Okay.
and I'll get a 25 on my history.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Sho, you stood and you saluted your grandfather. Um, we'll do our next most successful one, Yukimaru,
Yeah.
with your history and your eyes.
Yeah, I will kind of speak with him about has he
Mhm.
thought of which monastery he would like to
Right.
travel to when comes time to take his Inkyo, and has he thought of when and what he would like to give out as his inheritance before he
Well,
travels away?
right. So he has just bowed. I mean,
Sure, sure.
do
I
you
guess
want
that's
to?
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's
The,
just
the,
supposed to be more of
mhm.
a simple thing before
Yeah.
without any conversation added into it, then
Yeah.
um,
I mean, those are great questions to ask him later.
right? Yeah, yeah, definitely stuff I have got some questions for him, but
Oh
just to
yeah.
kind of hit up, yeah, trying to think of things that'll relate to history and
Uh-huh.
odds like that.
Well,
What kind of
right.
things should I probe there? I'll come up with
Mhm.
pulling up um some salutation of an
Mhm.
ancestor, of for a similar time, whether it's an
Mhm.
ancestor's retirement, or perhaps
Ah.
words spoken before heading off to war, something
Mhm.
that speaks to responsibility and history.
Awesome.
I'll
All
uh,
right.
yeah, share those.
Okay. Uh, Gohan is our next most successful. He has bowed. We get a salute from uh, the two older of the youngest generation.
Probably
Knock on
like
wood.
the worst time to do this culturally,
Uh-huh.
and from their hierarchy.
Mhm.
But at this point, Gohan will take a moment to kind of do that thing where they kind of shuffle without standing up out from around the
Uh-huh.
table into a more forward position, and to say, "Your words about doing what we can to help the family as much as possible to
Mhm.
recommit ourselves to our lands. This is something that has spoken to me a lot lately, and
Ah.
it is a sign towards that effort." And he's going to reach into the inside of his sort of kimono. Basically, all the money that we started with, I didn't spend.
Oh.
So it's going to be, money that he's found in the fields, money that was on Gohan, money that he's just taken from shrines on the way here because he's feeling like he's entitled to it. So he's just going to like drop a huge pile of cash on the ground right in front of him.
Nice.
Awesome. Not quite sure how that's going to work out, but okay. And
Well,
Yua,
maybe she would have been more
as our
successful before that
least successful participant.
happened, but she was so busy trying to formulate a response that she didn't have one made by the time that Gohan did that. And she's really nervous anyway because she thinks she started a fight between the fathers again.
Uh-huh.
So she's like, okay, I'll just lift my cup
Uh-huh.
in silent toast to my grandfather because that seems like it's going to be safe. And she does so, but she
Uh-huh.
sloshes sake on her hand by accident and just like is
Oh
mortified,
no.
but she's just trying to pretend like she doesn't show it. Like, I mean, her face is frozen. She's not trying to react to it, but she's like
Mhm.
lifts her hand up, but she lifts
Mhm.
her hand up too fast because Gohan just dumped all this money on the ground, and she sloshed sake on her hand, which is
Uh-huh.
like not not cool. She didn't mean to, but this is like it's only
Not
getting
cool.
worse.
Not cool. Oh no. Um, well, going off information that you have that moment, and um as the old man lifts himself up and turns. History. Um, as you are, you know, searching through your mind and you recalling historical precedent, um, it's a trifle odd and all of this has been a trifle odd, but what is most odd about it um, is there's no discussion at all about the role of the younger brother, Fujimune. Um, Also, in that conversation, there were a number of pointed comments, which you probably noticed the Lord and the Lady were referred to multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Which perhaps indicate that your great grandfather is not entirely pleased with the state of affairs, which is in and of itself odd, based off of something that you know uh, from from your kind of background assessment, which is that you know that your mother, who should have been the one doing a lot of the signing of documents, um, has not been. It's been Yunoko. Now,
Mm-hmm.
officially, it's been your father, but Yunoko taught you how to write.
I recognize her calligraphy. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you are you are very familiar with her calligraphy. Um, no one else probably noticed. There is almost no chance that anyone like away from here knows that,
Mm-hmm.
but you know it. Who are you targeting with Eyes Betray?
My great grandfather, and
Okay.
so I got a 17, and it's against their passive perception.
Yes. Uh, he to be completely honest, he could easily hold off, but he is being very open at the moment. Uh,
Okay.
so he could certainly his face could certainly beat a 17, but he is not attempting to at this time. So what would you like to know?
I'm gonna go ahead and get his motivation, or one
Okay.
of his motivations if he has multiple.
Um, he is still searching for a worthy successor.
Okay.
All right. Show with your 24 insight. Um, that um, whole byplay about neighbors. Um,
It's either about the Phoenix or banditry.
well, yes. Um, but the family has a long, long history um, with people that you have been taught at the Kakita Academy are probably bandits. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the wandering people who live in kind of the wilderness areas around here, right? Because a lot of semi-claimed lands, and it's really easy to call them all bandits because it's much simpler than that, right? Especially when you live in the Great Clan holds. Uh, but out here, um, good fences don't always make good neighbors.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, both your father and your uncle hold very strong opinions about this, apparently. Little harder to tell what your great grandfather thinks.
Fair.
Uh, Gohan. Um, the old man was addressing everyone in the room. Did that statement make sense?
It may be a little lost on me.
Okay. Remember how I described the room? You are all sitting. There are also servants moving in and about. The old man was addressing everyone in the room.
Good to know.
Okay. Hopefully that's clearer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Yua, wow, that was embarrassing. Okay.
Someone's got to be the black sheep.
Um,